very happy to be here. It took me about 2 hours, 45 minutes for 120 kilometers to get here. But I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm going to try and manage technology. There's a clicker that seems to work half. So there's an iPad here and a computer. So hopefully you forgive me because I am double your age. All right? When I arrived here and all of a sudden see people, my God, you're a lot younger than I am. But I'm still standing here on stage, so I have something ahead of you, which is great. All right. Now I see there. Change with impact. I'm an hotelier. All right. It hurts. It really hurts. And I started to work for a retail company. I'm a hotelier. Now, you ask yourself, can you tell me some of the big brands that failed? That was a question, by the way. Remember when a question you got to answer? It's a principle. Which brands failed? Big ones. Thank you very much. I've seen the slide. Kodak. Top. They were at the top of the photograph industry. Yeah? On the top. Failed. They had digital photography. Found out they had it. They had all the technology. Mobile phones. I still remember when I went from my mobile phone that was like a brick. It was this big. And there was a big battery on the side, and you had to open it up. And then Nokia came out, and everybody wanted a Nokia phone. They were the best phones at that time. You know what Nokia does today, by the way? That was another question. Shows you your age. They are in satellites. They're no longer in mobile phones. These companies, and there's lots more. Blockbuster. You want to talk about Blockbuster? They had the rental of videos in their pocket. They lost it. Netflix took over. They had it. Something. So that's why change is so important, all right? But who am I? I'm a hotelier. I worked for about 40 years in the hotel business in about 19 different countries. I've worked for Marriott. I worked for Hyatt. I worked for Jumeirah. And I don't know if you know this hotel. It's the only 6-star hotel in the world. In Dubai, I worked for His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the leader of Dubai. I worked for His Highness the Aga Khan in Paris. So I worked with a few high net worth individuals. But what has given me that after 40 years working internationally, I came back to Holland and joined my family. I took my family from Greece, and we are now living in Holland. I sat on every side of the negotiation table. I sat on the management side, on the asset side, on the vice president side, on the corporate side. I've been every job in the world I did. And I was a bellboy at 16 in a small seaside resort called Scheveningen. And for those foreign people, if you can pronounce Scheveningen correctly, I will buy you a beer. And then I moved up into the world, and my last job was a CEO of a hotel company, together with Philip Stark, the designer. So, I work now for the Bicester Collection, a retail company. But not only retail. We have shopping villages in about 12 different countries. We created luxury retail experiences in Europe, China, United States of America, and we have about 28,000 people working for us directly and indirectly. So it's a large company, and for those people who live in Belgium, we have a village here called Maasmechelen, which is near Maastricht, which is about an hour drive from here, which we have already for almost 18 years. Now, why did I change from hotels to retail? You ask yourself. And I ask myself that as well. When I all of a sudden get that phone call from an executive search company that says, Marco, would you like to work for retail? I said, sure, if they're going to build hotels. No. Excuse me? They're not building hotels, so why do you want a hotelier? well, we want you to work for us in order to see what you can do with your hospitality mindset into the retail business. I said, okay, interesting. So I started with them, and I had no clue. I had no clue what I had to change. The only thing that there was a visionary owner, which is called Scott Malcolm, and his family owns the Empire State Building in New York. And he created this company, and he says, I want to hire a hotelier in order to help us run a retail company. And I said, how? He says, I don't know. But what he did say, I know I have to change. Because the actual retail world and the retail transaction is won by Amazon. He says, but the only differentiation I have is physical retail. And which actually proved the case, because after COVID, where everybody went digital, guess what everybody wanted again? They wanted the physical again. So we want physical. And then he says, well, go figure out what you had to do. So I had to change an entire company. At that time, we were doing about 2.5 billion in revenue. I had to change it with a different mindset. I had to come up with something different. And my career with hotel business was very successful. And my wife asked me, why do you want to change hotel business? Why do you want to get out? I had done everything. And I thought, oh, if I have a chance to change the retail world, why not? A unique opportunity. And guess what? I went in, started work, had no idea. But what happened was that when I started my first day, and the first day was in a retail village in Bicester Village, and they have about 162 boutiques. And my first day, I said, okay, let's go walk around with the retail director. So we walked around the village. Good morning, madam, Marco. Good morning, madam. Good morning, sir. What are you looking for, madam, etc., etc. And the retail director did this. What are you doing? And I didn't understand the question. Because when you're in a hotel, what do? You greet everybody you see. Good morning, good afternoon. But in retail, it obviously didn't do that. So he says, what are you doing, Marco? I said, Brahim, I'm greeting the people. So why are you greeting the people? We don't do that in retail. Ooh, boom, got it. Started to understand. Because what was retail focusing on? Retail was purely focusing on transactions. They were focusing on, if I have a sock to sell, and I can sell 2 socks, much better, correct? If I sell 3 socks, much better again. So after about 6 weeks, Scott, our owner, he says, Marco, what do we have to change? I said, you know what, after 6 weeks, I need a bit more time, Scott. Give me 8 weeks. He said, no, I want to know what we have to change. And then, me being Dutch, I told him, Scott, you're stupid. He said, oh, all right. Why do you say I'm stupid? Because why are you focusing on transactions? Do you think for a hotel there's somebody standing outside the door saying, could you buy me a martini, please? Or somebody says, please come in and buy my Wiener Schnitzel. Or somebody says, go buy my room. We don't do that in hotel business. In hotel business, we create relationships and experiences with everybody. And somebody creates an experience with the doorman. Somebody creates an experience with fantastic food. Somebody creates an experience with the pillows. Somebody creates an experience with the bed. Somebody creates an experience with the smell. So what I very clearly realized very quickly was that we needed to move away from transactions into creation of experiences. That was a little bit the eureka moment for all of us, where we said, we got to change. Because if we don't change into experiences and keep on focusing on retail transactions, who's going to win? Amazon, Alibaba, Temu. They will all do it because the convenience of purchasing is so easy. The transaction is so easy. So what we started to focus on was very much focus on the experience. So how did we do that? Sorry, I forgot to say something. Besides running villages, we also run hotels. And we also run an ice hockey arena and we own an ice hockey team in New York. So besides just the villages, we have hotels, and we have ice hockey team, and we have an arena. That's what we own. And some of the experiences that we provide in our villages is this: luxury. You may say you are an outlet village, but what we did over time and how we changed from basically being a shopping street into every single every single village has a presidential suite. Didn't exist. Why would a retail outlet village create a presidential suite? You don't do that, correct? Change again, because we took the hotels and we actually say, no, we need to do something different. So how did I install that change? What are some of the main changes we made? The first change was that we needed to change our guiding principle. You needed to go fundamentally, you change. When you looked at the core values of the company was everything authentic and creative and double-digit growth, but there was nowhere where they actually said, what's your commitment to your guests? So the first thing we did, we changed some of the principles of the company. The biggest change we've made was that experience is everything. Second thing we did was we stopped calling our customer and clients. We start calling them guests. Why? Because people come to us. In a hotel, the simplest thing, good morning, good afternoon, how are you, etc. Same should happen for a village. Because what we did is I took a 5-star luxury resort and copied that onto a retail village. Because it actually is the same. And instead of guest rooms in a hotel, we have boutiques. The principle is still the same. It's a destination. It's luxury. It's 5-star. And then I started to do something. I hired a doorman. And the president of the company says, Marco, why do you want me to spend $500,000 on doorman? We're not a hotel. I said, no, you have not a hotel. But you have no face that represents who you are in this village. There was no personal connection with it. And remember, experience is everything. So that welcome was important. That doorman, there were 3. For 3 years in a row, were the most photographed people of the village. Why was it? Because they were the face of the village. We have the presidential suites. Then we didn't have enough restaurants. We had 3 restaurants. Why doesn't retail want restaurants? Any idea? Absolutely, sales per square meter. A food and beverage restaurant can never produce the sales per square meter of what a boutique can produce. So what do you normally do? Little restaurants. Mistake. Big mistake. Because an opinion of a guest goes through where? Goes through his stomach. Absolutely. So we used to have only 2 restaurants in the village. We now have 3, 5. We have people with villages with 9. And how I proved the point was, we had lots of Middle Eastern guests. They left after 4 hours. Why would a Middle Eastern guest leave your village after 4 hours? Any idea? Yes. No. We have prayer rooms. In all of our villages have prayer rooms, because we have a large segment of our market is the Middle East. Sorry. We missed halal food, because we didn't have food that a Middle Eastern guest could eat. They stayed 4 hours and then got hungry and left. They spent 1,100 and they left. We changed our direction, provided more restaurants, and we started with pop-ups. Yeah, pop-up restaurants, just try it out, and we started to provide halal food. That 4 hour became 7 hours. That £1,000 became £1,700. That's what changed it to retail, because they all of a sudden realized that it was the experience, not the transaction. It was the experience that we were creating that basically why this Middle Eastern guest wanted to stay with us, because he had the money in the pocket, but we didn't provide it. Okay? There's another thing that when you talk about change, there's some principles of change, in my opinion. First of all, you have to be a disruptor. You have to be comfortable with being a disruptor. What does that mean? It's basically we have a whole bunch of disruptors in our company that take a grenade, throw it into the business, and see what happens. I was one of them. I was a hotelier in a retail organization. Very, very strange. They didn't understand that. I get so excited, I forget all my slides. So they hired a specialist, which was me, in order to make sure that there was a hospitality difference. I started to have lots of cups of coffee. Why did I have cups of coffee? Not because I like coffee, I do like coffee, but I had lots of cups of coffee. One reason only: if you want change, you have to sell yourself first. If you don't sell yourself first to make that change, it's going to be very difficult for people to follow you. That's why I had so many cups of coffee. You have to be able to go on the barrier. Yeah? 14 Juillet, stand on the barricades. And I was shouting hospitality at every possible time. At every possible time that Sandy was talking about customer or client, I says, no, sorry, guest. Because if you are not willing to take change and be that change, then you shouldn't change. Because you are the individual that have to make that change occur. And in order to make it occur, you have to initially stand on the barrier. Another thing, stay true to what you say. Do not compromise. Do not compromise. Sorry, I have to say things 3 times, correct? Do not compromise. The moment you start compromising, you're diluting your message. When you're a change agent, stay forceful, stay dedicated. Keep on going what you know best, which is change. And again, like I said, be comfortable. Now, I had to prove myself, of course. How does this work? Because in retail, it is highly KPI-based. And you said it correctly. What's your, I have now statistics that I never knew. Conversion rate, capture rate, income per square foot, sales per visit, average transaction fee, how many units per transaction. And I come from the hotel business where you looked at occupancy, average rate, total revenue, food and beverage revenue, and your profit. That was it. In retail, they have it really, really worked out. So the president of the company said, you got to prove me that hospitality works. And we're very fortunate in our company. All our business analysts we hire from Harvard. So we hire some of the smartest people. My God, and are they smart? And I worked with that person and said, how are we going to prove that hospitality worked? And through case studies that we found out on the internet, we didn't have AI 10 years ago. And I started, by the way, we have something in common with your company because I started change in 2014 in a retail company when you started your organization as well. But I was able to find out that if your satisfaction goes up, your dwell time increases, i.e. how long you stay in the village. And the third thing is that your average spend goes up. And that's a vicious circle that keeps on going. And I'm telling you now, from the 2.5 billion we had at that time, we're now multiples of that, all right? How else are you going to deliver with impact? We have a system called Power BI. You have another reporting system. We use Power BI on everything we do. This is our guest sentiment survey. We have over 240,000 guest comments, yeah? And we're now only getting AI onto it, yeah? How can we get more out of these guest comments? And how can we associate these guest comments with what they buy, and how we can associate these guest comments with what they buy and which brands they're buying in, and how can we associate? And all of a sudden, AI gives you opportunities to start looking at data in so many different ways. So we proved our case. Every day, this dashboard is seen by everybody. Every day, our business director of a village looks at how this works. Didn't happen. The only thing that the business director normally was interested in was how much is my sales, how many transactions did I do. Now they come in the morning, they say, what's my net promoter score? What's my guest sentiment survey? Why? Because then I feel the temperature, how my guests are doing in the village. If you don't figure that out and you only look at your transactions, you have no idea. And the funny thing is what we found out when we started to put AI to it and we started to figure out what do people say. When people go to a store, and especially the ladies, what is one of the most important things for them to feel trusted and secure? We had no idea what that was. We thought it would be the colors, it would be the staff, or whatever the sizes. No. You know what it is? The dressing room. How is the curtain closing in the dressing room? Is the dressing room big enough that I can actually turn in my underwear and nobody sees me? Didn't know that. Our guest sentiment, and there's ladies here in the front absolutely going like this. So for a man to say that, yes, what we figured out through the guest sentiment survey, through our feedback, we found out what it is. And then, of course, once you have that feedback, you got to start doing something with it. How do you deliver with impact? Start small. Why do I say that? I was a CEO of a hotel company. I managed 69 hotels in 29 different countries and joined this company. And Scott Owen says, you go to Bicester Village and go there and make your point. I went back to my wife, Tammy, and said, Tammy, the guy wants me to look after one village when I've managed, 69 hotels in 29 countries. She said, what do you care? He pays you your money, no? And I actually said yes, because he took a big risk. He hired somebody who was a CEO of a hotel company to join his retail company. He pays me a lot of money, and then he tells me to start it in one village. That guy was absolutely right. The moment I was able to prove the change that I made in one village, guess what the other villages did? They came to look for me. How did you do that? What did you do? What did it deliver? What happened to your dwell time? What happened to your sales per visit? I all could prove these things were happening. Guess what I had to do in all these other 11 villages? Nothing. They made that change happen because I started small, proved my case, and once that was installed, people come towards you to have a look and see what you're doing. Now, why do I think AI, and you guys have AI on the agenda, correct? I just came from Milan where I gave a speech to 250 hotel concierges in Italy. And I told them that they had to embrace AI. And they are looking at me, what are you talking about? And I'm old, so I decided I had to learn AI. And I have a course with Cornell. My last module starts today, where I have 8 months of AI studies because I'm 65 and I didn't understand it. And I went down in order to learn AI. And on these concierges as well, where I spoke to them about was what, and I have to use 2 hands. I believed that you had the digital experience and you had the physical experience. Yeah? Where these two meet was where I thought that's where the strong point is. Until AI came in. You understand, you have a physical experience, you have a digital experience. If you look at some of the Asian guests, they walk through your village like this on the thing and walk into a pole because they're just looking at their phone. Yeah? So where the digital and the physical meet, I thought that was where the soft spot lied for us in terms of an experience. I've changed that. I'm saying now, it's the digital that drives the physical. Because with AI, you can find out so much about your guest. Actually, who am I talking to? Through AI, you can find out so much of your guest that the hotel concierges, who are relatively conservative, had their mouth open and said, what do you mean? What is AI? You are way ahead, and with your company as well, I know that your chief technology officer is basically your head of AI, correct? That's what it is. And when I asked Alexander once, he said, what does your chief technology officer do? He says, he looks after AI. I said, what else does he do? He looks after AI. No. What else does he do? He looks after AI, Marco. Stop. Because that's where the future is on AI. Yeah? And I give you an example. I went to Miami and arrived at the airport. And when you go through the passport control, then you go through security, and then you stand there and ready for me to be picked up by my driver. And what do you do when you arrive at the airport? You look for that board, correct? Marco Nijhof. No board, Marco Nijhof. So, all right, you pick up your phone, you try to call your secretary, ready to give her shit. Said, where's my driver? Forgot that it was time difference, secretary asleep, couldn't call. All of a sudden, I said, huh? Who knows me in Miami? I don't know anybody in Miami. He said, Mr. Marco, are you looking for somebody? I said, excuse me, how do you know my name? I'm your driver, sir. I'm here to pick you up. I said, how did you know my name? He says, very easy. I typed you in, looked what was on the internet, saw your picture, memorized your picture, and I gave you now an experience that you didn't expect, correct? He didn't expect. I went to a Guide Michelin star restaurant last week in California and was welcomed in the restaurant. And there were 3 people, Tim, Renier, and Marco. And the voiturier, how do you call it in English? The guy who parks the cars, yeah? He came and says, hey Marco, hey Tim, hey Renier, how are you? All right, very good, we're very well, we didn't expect that. The entire evening they addressed us with our first name. The food was great, but you expect that in a Guide Michelin star restaurant, know that the food is great. So all of a sudden that food disappears. It was the experience that they were able to provide and the knowledge that they had provided from us, what we liked and what we didn't like. And there was a Guide Michelin star, was only 19 seats. So it's a small restaurant. They actually changed the music to our liking because they figured out what you can nowadays do. You figure out what your profile is, what you do. That is the use of AI. They use that very, very well. And the thing is where that physical, that digital and the physical, where they're going to work together, you can know your customer much better or your guest much better. How did we do it? We have guest sentiment surveys, 1. We have our guest history, 2. We have our database from our repeat guest, 3. We have our point of sale system, 4. We have guest profiles, 5. When you put all of these together in AI, all of a sudden, I can start curating a physical experience that is led digitally. That's the next change that we are going to make in our retail villages. AI or the digital leading the physical. How did we do that? People say, if you look on our website, we have chatbots. Chatbots is no AI, correct? It's nothing. Everybody says, oh, we start AI, we start with a chatbot. No, rubbish. Absolute rubbish. But what is good is that we create an AI agent that sit on our website that actually answers questions and that actually started directing you to the proper direction you have to go to. That's what we did. We have a guest contact center where people make phone calls and they ask questions. These questions are being recorded, answers are being generated. The physical person actually immediately answers the question back. And it is about AI, it is about, and it's a personal conviction that I say, those people who embrace AI will succeed. Those people who leave AI on the side will fail. No matter what you say, AI is here to stay. And the more you can embrace it, the more interesting your job actually is becoming. But you have that chance, again, you have that chance to change. Yeah? And that's what this whole speech is all about. So, what are the key elements, in my opinion, to make change happen? Leadership, on the barricades, sell yourself, communicate, be the disruptor. Communication. Talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. Lead from the front and eventually lead from the back. Start small, deliver big. Systems and structures. You may not have the systems and structures today, Hire the specialists to help you with that. And if you commit to AI big. But then people ask me as well, say, Marco, how are you going to make that work? And I had that in our company as well, where we have 45 million guests a year. How are you going to make a change? How did I make a change? Very simple. One at a time. And that is to you as well. If you want to make change, it's going to hurt, but you got to make change one at a time. Thank you very much. That was it. Thank you. People have questions that they'd like to ask. Oh, there's a gentleman with a big hand. Please.
Here you go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Wayne Easton. We also work in the kind of environment where you're in, so I think they should be very lucky you are working for that company, bringing hospitality within.
Thank you.
So,
I have my year-end review in February. I give you the phone number of the chairman.
Yeah.
So.
I have one question. So, as we all know, in this kind of environments, you work with different kind of operators.
Yeah.
Before, if you look at the responsibility in the hotels, everything is owned or operated by, let's say, the company itself. Not always, because sometimes it's also renting out.
Yeah.
I can imagine that it's different when you step into these kind of environments and you need to work with all different kind of F&B operators to bring them to a certain level, like you mentioned on the NPS, like you mentioned on all the other things, and you want to get it to 4.5, which I've seen on your on the screen. I can imagine sometimes this is a challenge. It's not impossible, because I believe it can, but I'm really curious how you take this on board within your company.
Excellent question, because when we run the villages, we don't run the brands. The brands are run by Gucci, Prada, Dolce & Gabbana. They run the store. So we had a real problem as a hotelier. If I wanted the coffee to be served this way, or I wanted the coffee to be served that way, I told the food and beverage manager, and the next day it was done. Correct? You're absolutely right. Now when you have partners, and we have now in our food and beverage operation, let's say we have 7 restaurants, 8 restaurants, many different restaurants. The only thing you can do is influence, bring statistics, show statistics, influence, and train. What we do as an owner of the villages and operator of the villages, we organize training for our brand staff. So for us, it's not the service about the coffee. Yeah, the coffee needs to be served like this. We now want it to be served like that. No. For us, the change has to be made in the hospitality and the approach and the experience you give your guests. That's the biggest change we have to make. And when you don't control it, which we don't, it becomes harder. It's influencing, it's bringing statistics, show KPIs, and arrange trainings. That's how we did it. Other questions?
Yes, coming.
Yes, thank you, Marco, for the interesting talk.
Thank you.
I was wondering, how do you measure something like dwell time?
There's different ways we can do it. First of all, nowadays you have what we call number plate recognition. All right? Technology again. Every car that comes into the village gets a picture taken. Every car that leaves the village gets a picture taken. We can take averages from that. On a Wednesday, on a Friday, on a Saturday, and a Sunday, we do that. One. Second of all, we actually, in our guest sentiment survey, that people who leave the village, when you are a member of our club, you actually get a digital comment card sent, and there we have, did you spend 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or more? So we actually ask that feedback. Then again, through AI, scraping of your guest sentiment survey, we scrape that data, and we're then able to analyze how average length of stay is. But we have the advantage that, I would say, in most of our villages, they come by car. I would say that 85% to 90% comes by car. In Bicester Village in England, we would have 15% that comes by train. But again, there again, you see how many people come in your station, how many people leave your station. We have footfall counters, Yeah? How many people go in the store, how many people go in your concierge, how many people go in your toilets. We have counters, everything. When you work for retail, my God, I've never seen so many statistics in my life. They know everything, where you go, which branch you visited first, when you went to the toilet, when you went to eat. We all know that data.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, Marco. A question about the timeline. You stepped into this retail change mission or endeavor. What for yourself was the timeline that you wished you would see the change, and what was actually the reality when you start seeing the change?
Just excellent question again. So me being Dutch, being a driver, and we've got to move, I doubled my timeline. I thought that I would be able to do it in 2 years. It almost took 4 years for that fundamental change. Yeah, the fundamental change took really 4 years to make that happen. What then happens now, it is that snowball effect. So once it's in, it then runs. It just increases. But it took about 4 years for it to take place. Yes, and I would have expected it to be much bigger. And that's why I say as well, if you are the change agent, which I call the disruptor, if you are the disruptor, be willing to go on the barricade, stand on the barricade, prove your case, don't change, don't compromise, and keep on going. Thank you. Question?
I see any other questions? Any other questions? Over there.
Now we get the difficult questions. Now I got to be careful.
Hi, Marco. Do you have an example of a change that didn't go as planned and how you adjusted mid-process?
A change that didn't
If
happen.
any?
Yes. It took me 5 years for the initiative to get presidential suites in our villages. Our presidential suites, or apartments we call them, are, as you've seen it, beautiful designed spaces, etc. I wish I could have had those within 2 years, within the 2 years in order to do that. But those are 25 million to 40 million facilities. So that really took more time to do that. And I thought, that really didn't work the way I wanted to. Because if that would have been done earlier, I could have hung myself up, I could hook into it. I could hook into it in order to show, guys, this is what it is. This is what real hospitality looked like. And just to give an example, I don't wear a tie today, but normally I wear a tie. And everybody says, Marco, you're old fart, why you wear a tie? No, I'm an example of 5-star hotel luxury. That's what you do. And that becomes important again to set the example of how you make change happen. But that was one of the things that I wanted. And the other failure, there was a tiny detail. We have our presidential suites, our apartments, and we have what we call reserved parking or valet parking, where you basically come up, they park the car for you, etc. And I wanted that area to look like $1 million. Because what I say, when people come, and we're very fortunate, we have a lot of high net worth individuals coming with us. They come in the Ferraris, they come in the Rolls Royces, they come in the Bugattis even, it's incredible. And I wanted a proper space for them to park, with beautiful landscaping, etc. That is also the reason why we created a train station in Bicester. There's a train line. We opened that train line. We built a train station. And where that basically, when people come into that station, they say, this is a 5-star luxury hotel. Yes. That's exactly what I wanted to do. The first impression they get is get that 5-star luxury experience in order then to come in the village, and the tone is set. That tone setting is important then to provide your experience overall.
Thank you.
Please.
During the rollout of your plan, you started small with one village and then overall. What were the biggest objections you had to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
Biggest objection to overcome, retailers know it all. They says, no, you're wrong. It is not about hospitality. It's not about the experience. It's all about the transaction. Because we just need to bring in money. And I said, yeah, but I can help you bring in more money if you do this. No, 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 that's not what it is. That's why it took me 2 years to really make impact and then 4 years to really embed it, because I had to prove the case to a retailer that it was something else. That's why I always wore a suit and a tie, because that was for them the way, okay, well, here comes this 5-star guy again, yeah? And they thought as well after a year, well, thank you very much, he's going to be gone soon because he doesn't get traction. That's, again, the biggest thing you have. As an individual, if you want change to happen, you got to commit to it yourself and be standing on the barricades. Another problem was that the retailer says, no, we don't want to spend money on it. Yeah? And it's true. I cost a lot of money, and we spend now, where I was employee number 1, we directly employ about 1,200 people. Indirectly, we employ 28,000 people. Of the 1,200 people, I believe there are now 250 to 300 people who work in hospitality pure. 100% cost to the organization. 100%. We can't offset ourselves. We don't generate revenue directly. We generate revenue by dwell time, by people feeling comfortable in our village. And when you feel comfortable, you spend more time. When you spend more time, your money goes up. And we see that. We have as well what in hotel language we would call them bellboys or bellhops. We have in our village, we have hands-free shopping. Hands-free shopping, what is that? You register for it, you don't carry your shopping. You don't. Yeah? We come and pick it up for you and we deliver it to your car. Yeah? I almost say it's one of the craziest thing. You know what happens to the spend of people when you carry their luggage or their shopping? You know what happens? They spend 7 times more than they had intended. Just providing hands-free shopping. Yeah? But again, that had to be proven, statistics, KPI, conversion, capture rate, etc., how those changes were made. And those changes are still made today. We have even companies are coming to us and said, how do you do that with your bellboys and hands-free shopping? And we don't show them. We don't want to. But what it also provides us is great information where, again, we put AI on top and said, what is the spend? Where do these people spend most? Where did it go first? Where did it go second? In order to then find similar people that have that expenditure. That's what we do. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Anything else?
We have time for one more question. One more, last one. Okay, back where we started.
Maybe another question. I've seen you are operating in many different countries.
Yeah.
You mentioned you started at one of the location and then not copy, but use that system also in other parts. I can imagine, due to different kind of target audience, so you might change several things. So you're looking into Dublin, you go to Spain. How do you modify these kinds of concept portfolio in terms of brands or food and beverage brands?
The brands and the food and beverage brands change based on your customer base, very clearly. Yeah? And we do that through exit surveys, we do it through food and beverage surveys. We really listen to our guests. I just emphasize it, we really listen to our guests. Because when you listen to your guests, you can change your food and beverage mix. You can change your retail mix, although your retail mix changes are more important. Because certain brands want to be in off-price, and certain brands do not want to be in off-price. So those changes happen on, what is your best mix? Where the brands, are they willing to come to your country to be? If I take, for instance, Kildare, which is an island, there are many brands, because Ireland is 4 million people. At the end of the day, an island is a tiny market. Yeah? All these 4 million people come to our village, because that's what our footfall is. Our footfall is about 4 million people. But many brands try their first store in our village because they say, if it works here in off-price, then I can open up a full-price store on the main street. And that has worked for us as well, where we give people the chance to make a pop-up. We give you a lease for 6 months. We give you a lease for a year. And then once that works, they then go into full price and actually start operating a store, not with us. They have their off-price store, but then they go to the main shopping street in order to go to your brand. We are, as a off-price destination, a lot of times the first time people buy a Gucci bag. The second time they go into Gucci is full price. So we have become what we call an acquisition channel for full price customers. Because if you go to full price, sorry, and if you go to Bond Street, yeah, I'm sorry. This is the guy standing at the door of a full price store on Bond Street. How inviting is that? In a black suit, and he's just the biggest barrier. In our case, we're open. None of our doors are closed. All of our doors are open. So the entry level for somebody who would like to buy his Gucci is scared of entering a full price store. In our case, he isn't. And we did research with Bain Management Company, that we actually found out the first purchase of many people. We did it with American Express and Visa. You actually see that the brand is bought for the first time in Gucci, the second time they buy Gucci, it's full price. So we've seen that we have become as well an acquisition channel of full price guests. And which now for the brands, because it's all about distribution today, it's a fantastic distribution channel for them. Thank you.